Hello and welcome to another video. I'm Jolene from Live Art Journaling and Self-Development on Facebook, and this is a video that has been inspired by recent world events and my pursuit for satisfaction with things that are ordinary. Do you remember those days when you used to go to various childhood activities and gather badges for special things that you've done? I reckon I need a badge for all the ordinary things that I'm doing in the world. I want you to grab some magazines and I want you to look through them and find images that remind you of things that you do that are completely ordinary that you want to celebrate. So here you can see that I found a picture of some bowls. I've been kind of doing quite a lot of crafts recently with regard to air dry clay and making some bowls. So I'm cutting this one out, and you would have seen that I popped a bit of sellotape over the top of that picture. That's quite key. You do need some of that sellotape, and once you've put it down, either scratch away at that sellotape with your finger or get a ruler and press it down just to get all of the air bubbles out. Over here you can see that I've found a lamp base that looks like a tree. Another really ordinary thing that I've been doing lately is going for walks in and amongst the trees. So I'm going to snap that picture up straight away. So go and hunt through some magazines. They need to be shiny images, so it doesn't need to necessarily be magazines. You could use kids' books. You could use any sort of thing. Posters maybe, that you've got some old posters lying around. Gather yourself some little images. They do, as I said, it does need to be a shiny image for this to work. And gather them up. So you can see I've got all sorts here, and I'm just trimming them down now, trimming them down around that sellotape to be the size that I want. Now you're going to see later the sort of size that you need, because that's going to be determined by the size of the badge you make. But I'm going to make badges that are roughly the same size of a sellotape reel. So once you've got some pictures stuck up with some sellotape on top, I want you to put them in a bowl of warm water, and then you're just going to leave them alone for at least 10 minutes. And once you've left them, you can take them out of the water, and as if by magic, you can peel off the back. So sometimes you just need to scratch it a little bit, and you'll know when it's done because you'll peel it off and it just feels like thin plastic. Of course, if you use matte pages, this won't work because all of the paper will just shred away. So once you've collected some images, put them to one side, and we need to move to the next bit of the project. So I've got here a piece of grease-proof paper. You could also use baking paper, parchment paper, or just some thin, standard computer paper. I wouldn't go any thicker than that because we're going to do some sewing and we need some layers. You just saw then I've got an envelope there. I've been putting to one side all of my bits and pieces of scrap papers, wipe off paint sheets, all sorts of things. I've been sorting them into 4 separate envelopes that I kind of dig out bits and pieces of every now and then. So this is one full envelope full of scraps, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this little bit of greaseproof paper that I've got. I'm going to cover that with scraps. And then I'm going to move on and open up another envelope and do another one. And that just means I've got a couple of different pieces of paper that have got all of these different patchwork scraps on it. It's a really good idea to save your scraps into a few different bundles, so you're always going to be grabbing out bits and pieces of paper that are different groups of paper. It can be really interesting to see what you end up with. I probably should add that the medium I'm using to stick everything down with is some gloss gel medium. You could use matte medium if you wanted to, you could use PVA glue if you wanted to, it really doesn't matter. The idea is that we get all of this stuff stuck down. The bonus of the weather right now is it's beautifully sunny, and I popped all these sheets outside in my garden to dry, and they literally dried completely solid in 20 minutes. That's unheard of, really. If it's not so warm where you are, put these onto a radiator overnight. I quite often stick these with a magnet on my radiator and let them dry overnight. But any which way that you can to let them dry, and they must be completely dry before we head to the next stage. So here they all are, completely dry, and they feel sort of plasticky when they're completely dry. And I'm going to get a piece of brown felt, and I'm also going to get a piece of just any old thin cotton fabric to go underneath. It doesn't necessarily need to be a plain colour, can be anything. Could be an old pillowcase maybe, or just a bit of odd scrap fabric that you've got laying around. Could be patterned if you wanted. I just wanted a plain background on mine. And I'm going to pin this down so it all stays solid, and then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to run some stitches all the way over it. I'm not necessarily going to go in any perfect line, I'm just going to squiggle with my sewing machine all over my piece. I cannot tell you how much I love the look of these when they're all sewn down. The texture is beautiful, and it's well worth saving any scraps for future projects. If you are a junk journaler, just the smallest of square of this would be beautiful just in the corner of a journal. Okay, so I'm going to grab a sellotape ring. And I'm going to make some circles and just make sure that my little thin bits of plastic with the images on them are the right size that will fit inside my circles. What's really fun is these end up looking like little tiny see-through stickers with just the images peering. So you can see there, that's going to fit nicely within my circle. I'm not going to check all the other ones on camera because they do all fit, but essentially I'm going to cut some circles out of this and then stick my images on top. If you're not a sewer, by the way, you could just sew these down by hand if you wanted to, or you could just glue them down and then stick things on top of them. I just love the sewing because it adds texture. So you can see here I'm just cutting around my image just a little bit, just giving it a bit of shape, and then I'm going to pop that on top and stick it down with a Pritt stick. If you're not going to be gluing these, if you're not going to be sewing these, I would glue this down with something a little bit stiffer than a Pritt stick for this stage. But what I'm going to do is glue this down with a Pritt stick, and then head to my sewing machine. I'm going to put on my sewing machine my free motion sewing foot, and I'm going to sew all the way round that sticker, sort of probably a couple of millimeters on the inside of it, just so that it stays down. A bit like, you know, when you used to get those badges at clubs, they used to be all embroidered, didn't they? So here you can see not only have I sewn around that little image, I've also sewn around the outside of my badge, and I've put yet another piece of fabric on the back just to cover up all of those messy stitches on the other side. I'm going to trim off the excess fabric all the way around there, and then I'm going to use embroidery thread to sew a lovely blanket stitch all the way around the outside of the badge. Now is a really good time to just invite you to the Facebook group if you're not on there already. We have 2 free live workshops every single week and 1 summer school right the way through summer. It's facilitated by Lucy and I, and the link is in the description below. So I've embroidered all the way around the outside of my achievement badge, and I'm going to grab a safety pin and sew it onto the back. Again, if you don't want to make these to actually be worn now and then, you could just put a bit of Velcro in the back, or you could just glue these into your journal wherever you wanted to, or you could put some double-sided sticky tape on the back without peeling the backing off, and just sort of offer these as little reward stickers to yourself during the year. They're such good fun to make, and you're going to have such a blast making them. Don't forget, they are to reward you for things that are ordinary. These aren't things you have to work mega hard at. It's more about learning to be satisfied with the simplicity and the ordinary things that we women do every single day. So here you can see some are finished. Some I've put string around the outside as well. One I sewed a bit of old tape measure onto. And a couple of the images I wanted to work on top of. And so what I did is I just painted the top of the image with some gel matte medium. Matte medium will give this a little bit of tooth so that you can draw on it. The same would apply, you could put clear gesso over the top. And now, because I've got a little bit of tooth on top of those shiny images, I can work into them with my pens. I have to tell you, I'm loving this project so much. So now I'm going to grab some bling, and I'm going to grab my favourite glue, some E6000, and a toothpick. I like to use a little toothpick to get the glue out to add onto these bits and pieces. I've got here some beautiful Schwarzkopf flatback crystals. They are so divine, I can't tell you. Well worth a little bit of investment if you want to get some. And then I've got some cheaper flatback gems and some little heart-shaped beads that I found ages ago in a scrap store. And I'm just going to use these to decorate, to bling up my badges. I can't wait to wear these when I'm going to go out. I think they're going to be a real focal point. If you do choose to make some of these, I would love you to let me know in the comments below the ordinary things you're going to reward yourself for, the ordinary things you are going to be validating in your life. Perhaps you're going to validate the fact that you are queen chef of the household, or perhaps you are the most amazing taxi driver. Whatever it is, make sure that these things you're validating, learn to accept ordinary, because it really is the most wonderful thing when you can. I've heard tell that for some people ordinary is beige or bland. But actually I think ordinary is sky blue or grass green or brick red. Ordinary is the stuff that consistently happens in our lives that just makes us a bit reassured and just lets us know that we're okay. And right now, as I said, in 2020, it's not a bad thing to know, is it? So how are we going to add these into our junk journals? Well, flicking through, what you're going to find is I have already stitched onto a page in my junk journal, and this is quite a thick cardstock of paper. I've stitched a burlap ribbon over 2 pages, so I've got both sides to fill out. I've also headed to my printer and I've used a slightly thicker paper than normal to print out the titles of my badges. And I've used names like they would have given in those clubs when we were children, so Daydreamer and Bird Goggler and all sorts of things. So I've cut them down, and then what I'm going to do is grab my book, pin my badges onto my ribbon, find the appropriate title for the badge, use some blue distress ink just to buff around the sides and stick them all on. And you're going to see that it ends up being such a fun project. I can't wait to discover this on a day when I'm feeling a bit dissatisfied and bored. I can just head to this and choose a badge and wear it with pride. This has been such a fun, rewarding project to accomplish and to share with you all. I really hope you have a go. Please write in the comments below what you are choosing to make your badges for. We would love to meet you if you're not part of the Facebook group currently. Lucy and I would love to meet you and share all the other projects that we do and get you involved in the community that we have there. But if not, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every single subscription helps us get noticed, and of course that is the idea with being on YouTube after all. You have yourselves an amazingly ordinary day. Oh, I do love you lot to the moon and back.